Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Social Impact Center Impact webinar on providing shelter to young people during COVID-19. We are excited to have so many of you joining us today. We're doing a series of these related to the WISE community response efforts during the COVID-19 pandemic crisis. I'm Mark Putnam. I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director of the Y Social Impact Center for the Y of Greater Seattle. You may not have heard of the Social Impact Center, but earlier this year, I'll give you a little history. Nexus Youth and Families joined the Y to increase both organizations' reach and to better serve the young people of King County, in particular those residing in South King County. And last month, we announced the Y Social Impact Center, which integrates Nexus with the Accelerator Y under one name. The Y Social Impact Center works to dismantle systemic inequities by connecting kids, teens, and young adults with critical support and resources. The Social Impact Center has 4 divisions: foster care services, behavioral health services, young adult services, and today's focus, our housing and homelessness services division. Today, we're going to focus on our work with youth and young adults who are 12 to 25 who are experiencing homelessness. You may not know this as well, but Nexus Youth and Families, Auburn Youth Resources, as well as Accelerator and the Y of Greater Seattle, for more than 40 years, we've operated shelters and housing programs and services for homeless youth. So let me start before getting into our panel discussion. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about our response around COVID, our vision for the future, Q&A with staff and partners. But I wanted to start with just sharing a story of a young person that we've worked with in the past few months to give you a feel of some of the work that we do. We had a young person through our street outreach team, which works with to identify youth experiencing homelessness under 18. And a primary aspect of outreach is building long-term connections. So we have staff that go out and meet youth and young adults, and they may never need our services, but starting that relationship with every youth and getting the word out is our goal. So during 2019, the outreach team partnered, and you'll hear that word partner a lot today, with the Burien Parks and Rec Department. By participating in their after-school late-night programming. It was here where our outreach team met a 15-year-old young man who wouldn't need our services for months to come. But in February of this year, we received a call from him, and he had kept our services in the back of his mind for all those months. He was now 16, needed a place to live, and called Rachel, our outreach staff, who picked him up. And when she did, this young man pulled out his wallet and showed Rachel, her the business card that she had given him months prior. So he'd kept that with him and knew that he might need it, and he did. So he enrolled at our South King County Youth Shelter in Auburn. He was able to focus on school and a local internship during the short time he was with us, before he was able to safely transition into living back at home with his mom and his stepfather. So at the Y Social Impact Center, we support youth and young adults like him who have been impacted by systemic barriers like poverty and foster care, homelessness, racism, and interactions with the justice system. We serve youth through a trauma and equity-informed lens that offers individualized care and support for each young person's individual needs. I'm excited today that you'll get to hear from talented staff and partners that lead this important work in our community. We do it all through partnership. We do it all with really key staff leading this work and interacting every day with young people. Let's start by watching a video. Some of you may have been able to see our ribbon cutting, which for a new building that we opened during COVID, a huge accomplishment, opened a new housing and shelter in Auburn called Arcadia, which opened May 5th. And this video is led by Madison Jaramillo, who you'll meet later in the program. So let's watch this video.
Welcome to Arcadia! Welcome to New Arcadia. What you'll see behind me and in this area is our young adult drop-in center, as well as the space that we use for our young adult shelter. Drop-in is currently operating 24/7, so we offer basic needs services. Clients who come in are between the ages of 12 to 24. Here they have access to food, laundry services. They have a safe place to relax and hang out during the day. And then at 10 p.m. we transition to our young adult shelter, which is for 18 to 24-year-olds experiencing homelessness. They have a safe and secure place to sleep. We offer clean bedding, cots, and just a warm place to sleep at night. Here's the kitchen for staff to prepare meals for the young adults who are accessing the drop-in center and the young adult shelter. Here you'll see one of the showers. We have a few in this new facility. We really like to make sure that clients have the opportunity to access basic needs that they don't have access to otherwise. So hygiene items for the shower and other things that they would need, towels, etc. In addition to the young adult shelter and drop-in space that's downstairs, the upstairs piece to this new facility is a permanent supportive housing program. So we have 15 units available for clients to utilize that are eligible. It's for those who are chronically homeless and between the ages of 18 and 24. So this here is one of the units. It's essentially a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment, kind of set up like a dorm, where participants that are part of the program will have access to case management, where they'll work with our case manager on life skills, just kind of learning what it's like to live with a roommate, what it's like to be paying rent, how to live independently, and all the skills that are needed for having successful, stable lives. Something really great about this permanent supportive housing program is that clients who are able to pay rent due to whatever income they have also have the support of King County Housing Authority vouchers. And so this is a next step from homelessness or living in transitional living programs throughout their life to a more permanent, stable place, while also having the support to learn the skills like how to pay rent and live with roommates. And then from here, we prepare them for stable living beyond this program. The apartments are also equipped with brand new kitchen facilities. So we really will be encouraging the participants that are part of this program to learn the skills to be able to cook meals for themselves, since that is part of living independently. We also have a unit on the bottom floor that is ADA compliant. As part of this permanent supportive housing program, which is one of the few of its kind, we wanted to make sure that we were able to target all youth and young adults that are experiencing homelessness, including those with disabilities. In addition to the new facility, we are currently working on the admin building, which is set to finish shortly. This will house not only staff offices, but other services for the youth that are accessing the drop-in center and shelter to use, including a free medical clinic, as well as behavioral health services and substance use disorder services. Thanks so much for joining us on the tour of Arcadia. I'm really excited for the youth and the young adults that are often underserved in South King County to have a brand new facility to call their own. I'm really grateful to be a part of such a wonderful team that's willing to work with the vulnerable population that we serve. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn it over to Manchi here in a minute, but every time I watch that video, I'm just amazed and proud of everybody that contributed to making that happen, from our Abbott Construction, our contractor, to Madison and the team that have stood up a brand new program during a really difficult time, to say the least, right? So, and then the young people who are showing such resiliency, finding us and seeking support and seeking help for themselves to get on the right path. So before we talk to some of our partners and do the panel and talk about some more of the housing programs that we're working on, I wanted to introduce you to one of the social impact center's secret weapons, Manchi Lung, our Director of Learning and Impact. So Manchi has a PhD in sociology, master's in public health. We've been thrilled to have her on our team to really help us really look at our data, how we're doing on all of our programs. And during the first week of the pandemic, Manchi sort of leaped forward and responded with developing an assessment tool to help us identify the needs that young people were having during this period, and the data was instrumental in guiding our programmatic response. So Manchi, take it away. I would share a little bit more about the data that you found.
Great, thank you, Mark. Yeah, one of the things, the data and just how we approach data at the Social Impact Center and at the Y is one is to accurately measure the extent of the problem. So what is the need? What is the extent of homelessness? What are the types of people we're working with? The second thing we do with the data is really calibrate our response to that need. Right. And as we all know, during COVID, we had to really, whether you call it calibrate, pivot, change, adapt, be flexible, we needed to still meet those needs very specifically and also and with compassion and care. And the third thing that we want to measure in our data and see through the data is how resilient our communities are and how they become in order to get help with services, but also exit our services, leave our programming in a stronger, more connected and cohesive way. And so those three things are really sort of how we approach our work with the data, how we interpret and use the data in our daily work. So the next slide, I'll show you what we did with the data in the first 10 weeks of the COVID shutdown and the pandemic. As you all know, you were all there too with the in the first weeks of March. We knew that things were changing. We were all going remote. A lot of things were shutting down, and we wanted to have a tool that we could talk to people with that was really accessible, youth friendly, but also that all our staff could use. And so we we set up a protocol to ask people on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate where you and your family are right now in terms of stress and distress? And that was, we were able to give our participants, our community members, a way to sort of check in with themselves and also communicate their needs. And so we were able to check in with over 1,000 youth and young adults in our services. We checked in with them over 5,000 times. And among the folks that said they were sort of at a 6 or higher at a time of check-in, we kind of classified that as being in high distress. So overall, 22% of the people were in high distress. So reporting back they were 6 and higher. So what you see in the graph are 10 weeks of data that we collected on all these sort of check-ins around asking the same very easy, accessible question. And what you see is sort of a high peak at the beginning, which is understandable. That's when everything was changing and we were trying to even find people, sort of find them through social media, through their phone, through email, and then just really connect with them. And then what you also see is a sort of a very, after the second week, what I call a valley. So sort of this very sort of lower levels of distress. And then later, especially when the stay-at-home orders were extended and we kind of had a more better accurate realization of where we're at in terms of the pandemic, distress started to go higher. And so what this says to me is not only that we had high distress sort of at the beginning, but we were really able to respond very quickly to that distress through putting our resources together through a resource hub, having all our staff sort of on board, trying to reach out to all their participants, making sure nobody was left behind. And so this also, that valley, what we see really speaks to the effect of our staff response, but also more importantly, the impact and also the resilience of our youth and young adults. In terms of what was causing folks high distress, what it's great about this data, because it was over 10 weeks, is that we were able to see over time what are some of the things and what are the changes that happen to people's stress over time. So at the beginning of the pandemic, and what you see is sort of that line the 10-week trend is sort of the 10 weeks together, and the red dot is sort of the highest point of highest prevalence of distress. And so what we found in the beginning is that a lot of basic needs were being reported. So people are losing their jobs, they're losing their job, loss of hours, they're running out of food, they're running out of hygiene products, and their living situation is unstable. But over time, what we also found is those things sort of stabilize as programs pivoted, as people were able to find, food banks were expanding. We were able to expand our shelter 24/7. We were able to sort of offer different housing options. What we found is that later on in the pandemic, more emotional and social distress was occurring. So people had much more anxiety and loneliness. And then also family and relationship difficulties became much more prevalent. And so what we see sort of at the end of this 10 weeks and into the time we're kind of facing now is that both for all social, emotional, as well as sort of these basic needs, economic issues are really prevalent among our participants. So for homelessness and among young adults, this is sort of like outside of our participants, that they're distressed around COVID. Where are we at in terms of homelessness among youth and young adults in King County? What we have is that 19% of young adults are under 18, and 9% of young adults were counted as homeless in the latest sort of homeless census count in January. And a lot of these youth and young adults were within family units, but almost 1,000 of them were unaccompanied. This includes young people under 18, but also 18 to 24. And 31% of them, a third, were experienced homelessness for the first time. More than half were Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and a large proportion of them identify as queer, LGBTQ. But one thing I want to point out in terms of the graph is that over the years, we've actually had, given a lot of expansion of services, the elevated response to homelessness, especially homelessness among youth and young adults. If you imagine yourself during this time of your life, it's a pivotal time where certain decisions and experiences of your life have an impact for decades ahead. And so what we've been able to do as a community of providers, a network, is to really decrease the number of youth and young adults who are unaccompanied, who are homeless. And that's where we want to make sure, given that a lot of changes during COVID, we maintain that trend of decreasing numbers of youth and young adults who are homeless. Thank you. So so I just pass this back to Mark to talk about the new programs in the Social Impact Center at the Y.
Great. Okay, thank you, Manchi. That's great. And that, again, just having that data as opposed to a collection of anecdotes, I think just really helped us a lot during this period. And I hope that you can see just a taste of that information and how we used it. So I'm going to talk next just a little bit to tee up the panel. So we have representatives on the panel that will be able to speak to each of these programs. First, you see these 4 photos here. So during COVID, just in the last 4 months, we've really been able to operationalize a few different new programs. So you'll see Arcadia, you might recognize it from the video down below there, the orange and gray building in Auburn. The interior of it is that upper right corner one as well. So that is a shelter for 18 to 24-year-olds. It's a drop-in center in the afternoons. We had it for the entire day for much of the last few months, and have shifted to an afternoon session during the summer. And then upstairs, the 15 units of permanent supportive housing. So people that can really stay in the building and live there. It's their home. And they're 3-bedroom units, they're pods. We have 5 of those. So people have roommates and they have some shared living space and get that developmental growth of living with roommates. In the middle, you'll see it looks like a gymnasium, and you'll hear more about this program. This is the New Horizons at the Y day shelter. So we had young people who stay overnight at the day shelter. Rob Stewart will speak to this. Come to the Y, the downtown Y, which Sonia Kreider, our executive director for the downtown Y, will speak to this, but we were there. Her staff helped us set this up and manage the building, keep it safe and clean, keep distance. As you can see, the tables and spaces really set apart from one another. So that's the day shelter that we've stood up during COVID. To the left is a new building. We're a little bit we're very excited about it. We haven't yet signed all the contracts and paperwork, but it looks like it's going to happen. It's a building on Capitol Hill that has been used as an Airbnb by the building owner for years, for the last 5 years, I think. During COVID, that business dried up, and we had conversations with them about leasing the entire building for young people that are experiencing homelessness. And so we're very close to making that happen. Got a great contribution from a foundation last week that's really going to get us to be able to open that. We hope to open that building in September. And then finally, there's a building in Tacoma that you'll hear about from Robert Taylor called Arlington Drive, which is 58 units of housing. That'll be up and running next month. We'll get that building opening as well. So more to hear on that. But housing and home stability is really a priority for us, and we talk about whole person health in our field a lot, and certainly at the Y around just the physical health, but also the emotional health. But housing is a key part of that as well. Housing is a really core ingredient to being healthy overall. And we know that youth and young adults need and deserve more to prosper. Many of the young people we work with have some things to overcome, some trauma early in their lives or currently that's happening, and that's going to be something that we're going to need to work with. That period that they're with us in housing, in our support services or mental health services, can be really a period of stability and regeneration and rejuvenation. And then housing is really a racial equity issue. As Manchi showed, 57% of the young people that are experiencing homelessness in our community are Black, Indigenous, or people of color. Within the Social Impact Center, it's 69%. So we serve even more than the countywide average. And it's incredibly important for everybody to have housing, but particularly young people that have experienced trauma, and if it doesn't happen during this period of 18 to 24, we can sometimes see those young people become homeless and continue to struggle for quite a while. So it's such an important time period. So we'll talk a lot about a lot of this, but some things that we'll hit on, some things that are really a focus for us right now as we really address this new environment of COVID, are that we're really working to place the services that the Social Impact Center has, mental health services, eviction prevention, job search, into our branches, and really offering those to all YMCA members. That's a key strategy we're working on right now. In addition, advocacy to retain funding. The state and local budgets are looking much worse than expected, and we're bracing for some of the big decisions that potentially could impact some of our programming and throughout the field. So eviction moratoriums, we're advocating for those things. We're being supportive of the racial justice work that's happening in the community. All of those things, in addition to specific grants and funds that are coming to us that we pass on to young people. And then we're pursuing opportunities to serve more young people all the time. We're always keeping our ears and eyes open for those opportunities. All right, so we're going to show this video, a partnership with New Horizons, and then we are going to go to the long-awaited panel. Go ahead and show this video. Thank you.
So this is our partnership, New Horizons at the Y. New Horizons is an overnight shelter and resource provider for youth who are experiencing homelessness. We've moved our day services over to the downtown YMCA to have a place for our youth to come be inside and safely social distance. A lot of places that our youth might typically go during the day are closed now. I remember one of the things at the very beginning of this, a young person had said, it's gonna be 12 hours since I can use the restroom again. I better go now. I mean, that was something that stuck with me. Just like those little minute things that we take for granted, you know, our youth don't have access to.
This partnership came to be part of the King County Youth Service Provider collaboration, which is several agencies throughout King County, which both New Horizons and the YMCA, Accelerator YMCA, are a part of.
For years, we have all partnered as youth providing organizations, but the level to which we are partnering now is unprecedented. We are working sort of without borders, without boundaries. We are working together, sharing staff, sharing ideas. And I certainly think that that kind of collaboration is essential for helping us solve youth homelessness, young adult homelessness here in King County. So that is a bright spot.
Another thing that has been wonderful about our partnership with the Y, beyond just having the physical space, is the staffing partnership. We at New Horizons, we are a lot smaller staff, and we typically run day programs Monday through Friday for just 2 hours a day. Now we're having 7 days a week, all day service.
The partnership with New Horizons and Accelerator Y and the Downtown Y, YMCA of Greater Seattle as a whole, has been tremendous. Everybody stepped up to the plate. We worked really well together, and I look forward to doing more activities with one another, more programming in the future.
All right. All right. So that was a great video. Just gave you a showing of what that program really looked like. I'm excited to introduce the panel, and we have 5 leaders in our community really that are working to address youth and young adult homelessness in different ways. So if I could. I think the next slide, there we go, is the 5 panelists. Rob, Coach, Sonia Kreider, Madison, Robert, and Scott. You'll hear more about the different roles that they have in the programs that they operate. We'll start with Rob. Rob, we just watched that video of the New Horizons at the Y day shelter that we operated that I described earlier as well. Can you share a little bit about what brought New Horizons and the Y together to establish this day shelter program and how it went from your perspective?
Yeah, hey, thanks, Mark. I'm grateful to be on this and grateful for everything the Social Impact Center does. You all do such amazing work. When COVID hit, it was really unclear how providers were going to respond. There were so many things that were unknown. But we did know that we had a really vulnerable population, and simply doing what we'd always done wasn't going to work. And so immediately we came together to figure out how we can actually create physically distanced programming so that we can meet the needs of young people during this really difficult time. And Mark and I talked many times before in the past around partnership and how the 2 organizations can come together, because that's a huge part of who Mark is. And we felt like this was a really, really good time for us to come together. Our major need at the time was we had relied so heavily on an engagement service that was really milieu-based, where young people were coming together and gathering in large numbers in a relatively small space. We had the young people, we had the food, we had the staff, but we just didn't have a space that was going to be effective for doing that kind of work. And so Mark mentioned possibly using the Downtown Y, and it just felt like such a great partnership. And to the point of people on the video and Aaron and Alicia, just commenting on how well the staff came together, there's so many similarities and so many of the same values and commitments to the young people we serve and to being a really person-centric organization. And so it was really, really an amazing partnership from my perspective. And we saw that our numbers actually towards the end were growing, and young people found it to be a really effective way for them to come inside and to stay inside and have their basic needs met, but also meet with their case managers and to also talk with their employment coaches around, what they can do in the interim around employment. So it was really, really an effective partnership. And I was honored to just be a part of it, and grateful for the YMCA and the Social Impact Center and all of the work that happened. And Sonia and you and your team just did such an amazing job of opening that space, and we are so grateful. That never would have happened without you.
Well, thanks, Rob. Rob, I mean, I think the partnership was great. We look forward to further partnership. These two organizations have partnered well before you or I were a part of either organization, I think, but we definitely built a really strong connection. I think the young people see it and feel it and benefit from it. So I hope we can keep doing that. Kreider, Coach, she is our executive director of the Downtown Seattle Y. How did this program work out from the perspective of the branch? And I know that you already had a partnership in connection with New Horizons before this yourself as well. You might want to speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a partnership with them where we had some of the folks that were coming over from New Horizons during the week prior to COVID, and they were playing basketball and getting engaged that way. And sometimes they would use the workout equipment if they were in the gym or in the facility. And so we knew that partnership was there. So when you brought that to our attention, that there was a potential to bring some more youth into the building and keep them off the streets while COVID was ramping up and, not knowing where to go or how they were going to get food, or even just like you said, just use the bathroom. We were ready to open the doors and with open arms and do whatever we could and make the adjustments as needed to make sure that they felt safe and your staff felt safe and everybody felt like they were welcome. We didn't want them to feel like it was just the Y and now you're a guest in the Y. We wanted them to feel like family. And so that's kind of, the philosophy of not just the Y, but just the downtown Y in particular, because of the way our space is set up and where our space is set up, that we want to be a Y without walls or without borders, where we partner heavily with the other organizations and other entities that specialize in this work, and they use our facility. We kept trying to re-innovate and make sure that everybody knew that we're a space, and we'll make sure that this space is available and it suits every need that you have. Just tell us what it is and we'll make it happen.
Thanks. And I think your staff there at the Downtown Y, Ed and Lilio, and just did such great work. We're so welcoming to the staff of New Horizons and the Social Impact Center and the young people. I think it shows what we can do. And we pulled this together. Rob and Kreider and Aaron Fox was a key part of this. Over a matter of a couple of weeks. We're just like, I think right away, Kreider, you were like, yep, let's do it. It's open. We've got space. Rob was like, we need it, and the city and our funding partners committed pretty quickly as well. We're still haggling a little bit with them as usual, but it came together really, really quickly. So it's impressive to see kind of what we can do. And we had some challenges. We had a COVID case. We had the protests happening at City Hall a block away, coming by the building, and every night down there for a couple of months. So it wasn't without its fun, but I think it really helped a lot of young people, and I'm appreciative of both of you guys. Let's talk.
Mark.
Go ahead, Kreider.
I think that speaks volumes to the commitment that the three entities, between you and Rob and myself, just our organizations, the entities and the pieces came together so well, even during a pandemic, a protest, everything that was going on, we still were able to make sure that people were safe. And even with one case, that was it. That was one isolated case. And the measures that were taken to make sure that everybody were safe, and the measures that were taken to make sure everybody, knew what we needed to do to make this happen. I think that just speaks volumes. And I think the sky's the limit for what we can do moving forward.
Yeah, totally agree. And, I think as I transition to this question for Madison, because this is really relevant to both of these programs, the day shelter and then standing up a new Arcadia shelter and housing program, we couldn't do this without staff, the staff of New Horizons and the Y, being willing to do this, to trust us as we put forward, again, all these uncertainties around, particularly around COVID, and really making sure that they felt safe and supported. We had, leadership, also have serving and taking shifts at the buildings and really stepping in, trying to be there alongside our frontline workers, really, who sometimes are overlooked in those conversations about COVID frontline workers. These are shelter workers and human service providers, and certainly some of the services that we've been able to transition to being more virtual, but it's can't do that with shelter and housing programs. So Madison, you led the opening of the new building we've talked about, called Arcadia. What are young people telling you about their experiences during these twin pandemics of systemic racism and COVID, and how are they doing? Like, I know that's a big question, but how's it going for the young people you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I think what our participants are expressing overall is that they're okay. They often express gratitude for opportunities and programs like ours that can help them during these difficult times. But although, they express that they're okay and they seem okay, I think that experiencing a lack of resources that are essential to surviving, shelter, food, water, and then on top of that, the systemic barriers they face on such a constant basis, I know it impacts our youth more than they're willing to express. For our youth, and specifically our youth of color, these are things that they've always had to experience. Every day of their life is a pandemic, essentially, and it's not something new to them. It's just now being recognized as something on a much larger scale. So with that, as much as our participants express that they're okay, there's always more work to be done for us as service providers to help better serve our clients during these difficult times. And especially like for our participants, like the ones we see coming into the drop-in center and our emergency young adult shelter. I think, like I said, most are hesitant to talk about their barriers that they face on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, we're here to listen to their experiences and offer support where we can. But I think what they need most is a place they feel safe and welcome and can get their needs met without judgment and not be another barrier for them. The rest, the support and open sharing will come with time. So I hope that's what our participants are experiencing when they access our services.
Thank you. And that's, powerful. I mean, I think you're right. Like they're the experiences of a pandemic and all that's been thrown at them is in some cases nothing compared to what experiences in trauma and what's been thrown at them, prior to all of this. So, that stability, I think, that you and the team provide there is an incredibly important part of the lives of the people that are living in that building now. And it's just been great to see it come to life since early May. So congratulations on all that you're doing there, and thank you. So let's go next to Robert Taylor. Robert is the newest member of the Y Social Impact Center team, and our newest program that's being developed. It's been in the works for a couple of years, and the timing is such that it's all kind of coming together now. But we're working with Tacoma Housing Authority to build a brand new building that we just learned yesterday will be opening a couple of months before we expected it to, which is good news, but also means we're scrambling a little bit to make that happen. It'll also be our largest single site and our first program outside of King County. It's down in Tacoma. So Robert, already this question is dated, but I said, what are you focused on, let's say 6 weeks now prior to opening to ensure we're ready to go?
Thanks, Mark. Yes, some great news yesterday, but yes, it has created a sense of urgency, and it's really forced us to suddenly become laser focused for me on three things: staffing, and making sure that we're hiring staff that's got the experience, the energy, and that we're providing the right amount of and the right type of training. Because the second task is going to be engaging the young adults in the community as we ramp up to the first day of opening the doors. So it's step one, getting staff hired, which I'm in the middle of now, getting them trained, and then getting out in the community to the local partners, shelters, and engaging and trying to find prospective tenants that are really ready for that opportunity. And then the third is, how do we move people in with expediency, yet safety with COVID? So, we've been in talks, several talks since yesterday with Tacoma Housing Authority about needing to come up with COVID move-in plans. And what does that look like? We were having those talks before, but now they're changing, especially as COVID continues to change. So those are the three things that I am really, really focused on in the coming weeks. And unfortunately, I'm not alone. The support I've gotten since joining the Y, the Impact Center, has been amazing. And the support and the collaboration that we've got going on with Tacoma Housing Authority has also been amazing.
That's great, and lots more to come on that program. I think you'll be hearing a lot about it. So thanks for all you're doing, Robert, and welcome to the Y. Scott. Scott is our senior director overseeing all of our housing and homelessness work at the Y. Been in that position for less than a year. I forget exactly. So what new opportunities are you seeing to increase housing and other support services for young people experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for the invite. So yeah, we're really excited about some upcoming housing projects that we're seeing. So you had mentioned that we are working on this Roy Street Commons, which is 40 units of housing for homeless young adults in our community. So that means a direct impact to our community. So we're going to see 40 young adults that will be exiting street life or shelters and will be coming directly into a safe and stable housing situation. So that's one of the aspects that we're looking at right now. Since COVID has hit, we've seen an increase of about 11% of our programs across the board, with new participants coming in almost daily. And so we're seeing a huge uptick of referrals and people that are needing to access services. So what the Y is really focused on is creating opportunities for more housing and housing development as we're looking at this pandemic, the current pandemic, but then also what our Black and Brown youth are experiencing on an everyday basis. What are our LGBTQ youth are experiencing as well. Another thing that I'm excited to share about is that we anticipate a large sum of money for eviction prevention. We know that a lot of our young adults, they may be in their first place or may have lost their job or on furlough during this time of COVID. And so the YMCA is going to be a part of the responsive system to make sure that they are going to be able to pay their rent, make sure that they are getting their needs met, and some additional case management support. So we're hoping to launch that relatively soon. And then we also have some additional funding that we're looking at for working with commercially sexually exploited young adults. We are looking at partnerships throughout our community regarding housing and homeless prevention. So we really see that although this has hit our community really hard, the Y has been on the front lines of responding to the needs of our community, especially for young adults in our community. We're seeing a lot of young adults that are in crisis and needing support. And so the Y is definitely going to be a part of that conversation moving forward.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate all of you. We're doing a lot. We've got a lot of different things moving. All of them. I hope you also noticed a theme around partnership. So partnering with the Tacoma Housing Authority in Tacoma, partnership in Auburn, really started between Nexus and the Y, and then we became one organization. the partnership with New Horizons, obviously as well, and some of these other opportunities that are popping up that Scott spoke to. I want to go to some of the questions that some of you have sent in. One was for Madison. What kind of initial utilization are you seeing at Arcadia in the shelter and in the housing?
Yeah, so right when we opened, which was the beginning of May, out of the new facility, we immediately saw an increase in utilization at our drop-in center and shelter. With this pandemic going on, it's, some positives have come out of that. Some of the barriers in getting housing have come down essentially for a lot of our participants. So we've seen, since we've opened, a decrease in utilization, but it's because of positive things like our youth getting into more supportive housing programs. And then as for our permanent supportive housing program, we were able to process a lot of referrals right away. So we are almost at capacity. We have 4 of 5 units filled and are in the middle of processing our last 3 available units. So by the end of the month, we will definitely be at 100% capacity.
Great, thank you. I also see a question from Christine asking about hearing about if there is after hours availability for youth to connect and access services. So we have the drop-in center hours late in the day at Arcadia. I think that kind of answers that. We've got shelters that are available overnight. We also operate a mental health youth crisis response system called the Children's Crisis Outreach Response System, or CORS, which is available via 211, and it can be immediately 24/7 responsive. A couple of questions that have come in around homelessness overall in King County among youth and young adults. And Scott, maybe you, and then maybe I'll go to you, Rob, too, to answer. But are you seeing decreases? It shows that there's a decline over the last few years across the county. What are we seeing at the Y and in our programs, and how do we expect kind of COVID to impact that as we move forward? Scott?
Yeah, so we have seen a increase in services since COVID has hit, increase in need for more 24-hour locations to make sure that people are able to stay in place. So that was one of the big things that we actually initially saw is, Governor Inslee put in this stay-at-home order, but if you don't have a home, where are you supposed to stay? And with the decrease of services that are at the library and other locations, we really saw our young adults asking for more services and more support. So that's really what we kind of saw, starting in March timeframe. So we had the 24-hour supportive shelter that we had that we put into place relatively quickly and worked with King County around funding for that. But we anticipate that we're going to see, as a result of whenever the eviction moratorium is lifted, we anticipate that we're going to see a huge need for young adults, and we're also seeing underrepresentation of youth of color in these point in time counts. And so that's something else that we really want to highlight, and we want to be about making sure that those voices are raised and elevated. So that's really something, the YMCA has been part of some of the planning of these counts. And so we will continue to be vocal advocates for making sure that we're representing all populations that we're a part of.
Thanks, Scott. And one of the I think positives of the eviction prevention funding that's coming through that we'll be able to support young adults to stay in their housing is that the state is requiring that those resources really go to communities communities of color, really, that are most we're seeing being most impacted by COVID. And I think they're actually, like, if the funding is not going in an equitable way to those populations, then the contract with certain agencies will stop, which I haven't seen funders do before. So you're seeing some changes in the way that our government is moving as a result of, again, I kind of call them the twin pandemics of COVID and the institutional racism. Rob Stewart, I wonder if you'd speak to kind of the count and sort of overall homelessness, what you're seeing at your agency at New Horizons.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think I would answer similarly to Scott. One of the things that I think will be a lasting impact for the young people that we see is that because housing that is appropriate for them is a little harder to secure at this point, I think their homelessness has been unfortunately extended because of COVID. I think that a lot of services have restricted, have de-intensified in some ways, and I think that has resulted in some young people sort of facing a little bit of a longer term stay on the streets or in shelter, which is really unfortunate. And to that point, I think being able to build up our housing resources with housing that is appropriate for young people that need both transitional and permanent supportive housing, I think is essential for us as a continuum if we really do want to see the numbers realistically drive down. I have seen sort of an interesting trend where at the beginning of COVID, there was a restriction on the numbers that we saw because I think there were some young people who were able to use their last available resource for a temporary period of time. They were able to call a friend of a friend and stay with them for 1 month or 2 months. Most of those really emergency-based placements that they found for themselves seem to have dried up. And so we're actually seeing our numbers increase again as it relates to young people that are seeking really basic needs support, shelter support. So we have not seen our numbers over the last year or 2 years reduce. We are still seeing really high numbers of young people prior to COVID, more than we'd ever seen at New Horizons ever. And so COVID has certainly changed the landscape of how we do emergency services. And I think it's kind of ever evolving, but I don't see our numbers significantly dropping. And without appropriate housing, sort of like some of the solutions that you're proposing with Arlington and this Roy Street, I don't know how we dig out of just a housing shortage and find more appropriate placements for young people.
Yeah, thanks. I completely agree, and I think it's a time to dig in, not to step back. And I'm seeing a lot of people, a lot of different agencies do that, certainly at the individual level, but agency level and even government. So I'll ask one last question. I think we'll kind of wrap up from there, but maybe for Robert and for Madison, you're both, well, Madison's already done it. Here's how I'll do it. Madison, why don't you advise Robert? How do you open a brand new program during a pandemic? And then Robert, if you have any thoughts about that as well. You've opened some programs yourself in the past. This isn't your first rodeo, but Madison.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as this pandemic hit, it definitely altered our expectations. I think everyone goes into opening new programs or facilities thinking about all of the different outcomes and possibilities, hoping to run a new program as smoothly as possible with a come prepared for anything mindset. But the reality is that things are never going to go as planned. They're going to come up and changes are going to be required. So even if you think you're going to have it all covered and expect the best from your program right away, things are going to need work. So I guess with that, my advice would be not to look at these changes as negative outcomes or being unprepared, but more like quality assurance. Everything is constantly improving, and this is definitely one of those things.
That's great. Thoughts, Robert?
No, I couldn't say anything else. That's perfect advice based on my experience and going into this. Thank you for that. My experience, being in emergency services primarily with older homeless demographics. One thing I can add from my experience is that programs like shelters, permanent supportive housing, transitionals tend to be opened up really, really quickly because of the emergency need. So you'll feel pressure from maybe the city or the county or even internally to get the doors open as soon as possible. And so with that, right, things get dropped. So for me, piggybacking on what Madison was saying, you just have to expect that, a lot of things are not going to go as planned. And have your staff prepared to maintain the poise so they're not feeling overwhelmed or stressed out, so they can continue to do their best work. So as a leader, there's a lot of weight there for somebody in Madison's position or in my position to say, I'm going to absorb any drama or any fallback if A, B, and C turn into X, Y, and Z, skipping everything in between, right? So your staff, who tends to do the majority of the work with the clients that we're facing, can maintain their energy and maintain that positivity. So, those are some of the things that I've learned is, like she said, just expecting very few things to go right when you have to open the doors, in Arlington's case, 90 days sooner than expected, and just roll with it and know that the heart of the work is there, and make sure the community is involved, right? So they understand what's coming and that what's there is needed, not a hindrance. So that's what I've learned. Just rolling with it, maintaining your poise, and utilizing the teamwork and the support systems that you have around you.
Thank you. That's great. Well, we're gonna wrap up. I hope all of the attendees really had a chance to see and hear and feel that we've got some great people working in our community, addressing these needs. You're seeing really leaders in our community around this, some of the, as I said, the frontline heroes, and then all of us actually on this call are primarily really administrators as well. So we all have deep respect for the staff that work for us, that are doing this work, and most importantly for the young people that are showing incredible resiliency in being able to ride this wave, and work on themselves and work on improving their futures alongside of us. But that's happening. Lots of great stories, like the young man that I talked about earlier, that we met through our outreach, and is now stably reconnected with his family. So with that, I want to just close us out. Thank everyone for your time. Lots of opportunities you'll see here for getting involved with us and taking action. You can always reach us at the seattleymca.org /social impact center. There you can learn about volunteering, donating, taking action. You can also reach out to me at mputnam@seattleymca.org. I'll get back to you quickly, and would be more than willing, any of us, to talk with you more about the work we're doing. Finally, share resources through our social media, your network, about upcoming events. One of those is Step Out and Level Up. So we're doing a virtual conference. This is an annual event that we have. It's obviously normally in person, but with young adults. Any young adult that is interested in working on their life skills and employment skills. We'll have employers at this event and motivational speakers and different workshops where young people can learn skills. It'll be 10 to 2 p.m. between Monday and Thursday, that week of August 24th. So if you're looking for something for your young person to do, or people that would benefit from this, please sign up. seattleymca.org /level up. All right, 11:59. Thanks everybody. I really appreciate participating. Thanks to the panel. Thanks Manchi. Thanks to the development team for helping put this on. Have a great day.